Welcome everyone to HueFin News. Today is March the 2nd, 2019, the home of the 2-minute price prediction, as well as give me all the news according to the charts. We're going to talk about, will Kraft-Heinz problems roll over into these cannabis stocks in this in this stock market? We're going to talk about that today because we ran across this article listed to the internet on the 28th of February 2019. Okay, written by the Motley Fool. Author is Sean Williams. And the issues that Kraft-Heinz has endured over the last week, apparently he is expecting there are some things that can insinuate long term that the same thing that happened to Kraft-Heinz will happen to some of these cannabis stocks, i.e. one of them would be Aurora Cannabis. So we're going to go ahead and look at this article real quick. Then we're going to look at the price chart for Aurora Cannabis to see whether or not we can actually see what has happened to Kraft-Heinz happened to Aurora Cannabis. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get started. Some of the things that happened to Kraft-Heinz happened right here in this particular section of the article. There has been a trifecta of failures that happened to Kraft-Heinz that brought this particular price of the stock down, and he has given us a quick recap of what was disclosed on its earnings. Okay, now Kraft-Heinz went ahead and wrote down $15.4 billion in intangible assets, meaning that they're not going to be able to recoup that money as an asset. And it was tied to its Kraft and Oscar Mayer brands, pushing its fourth quarter loss on a non-adjusted basis to more than $10 a share. They also went ahead and announced a quarterly dividend of only 40 cents per share. That is a 36% reduction from that 62.5-cent dividend that they did previously. The payout cut is designed to save the company about $1 billion a year in order to help reduce long-term debt of $30.9 billion. So they're trying to save money so that they can pay down some of that long-term debt that they have on their books. They went ahead and also announced that they received a subpoena from the SEC regarding their accounting practices, their policies, their procedures, as well as their internal controls. So there is some questions that needs to be answered from that perspective. All of those things has led to a massive decrease in the value of this particular company. Sean goes ahead and writes, mind you, these were simply the issues that news outlets homed in on late last week. Underlying these problems were a continued decline in margins, stagnant sales, and a sudden urge to pay down nearly $31 billion in debt suddenly. Yet there was a precursor, something that was seen on the horizon long ago, that Kraft-Heinz could be in trouble long before its foundation turned to jello this past week. Namely, the company's goodwill. Now, that is a section on the income statement, on the accounting ledger, as to company's assets. Okay, goodwill is one of those forms. Now, goodwill represents the premium that one company pays when it's acquiring another, above and beyond the accounting for tangible assets. So it's kind of like the intangible things goodwill represents. Those things that you can't actually smell, taste, and feel. Some goodwill is to be expected when making purchases. And then it goes ahead and write, for instance, a premium is often needed to persuade the board of directors of the company that's being bought to agree to the buyout. The goal of the purchasing company is to make sure that they can create enough value of them buying out that company for more money than what the goodwill actually was paid for. Okay, and they usually try to do that either through cost synergies, trying to reduce costs, intangibles such as tenure workers or management or production service expansion. Then this goodwill comes off the books over time. So goodwill is acceptable to a standpoint. However, Kraft-Heinz has been dragging around $44.8 billion in goodwill at this time last year. That represented more than 37%, almost half of its total assets. Between the expectation of recouping $44.8 billion in goodwill, as well as how much value Kraft-Heinz placed on its brands. The warning signs were there for investors. So now we're going to move down here to Aurora Cannabis. Okay. Sean goes ahead and writes, for example, Aurora Cannabis has made a habit of acquiring its way to the top production spot in Canada. Even though Aurora has mixed in a number of organic projects, Aurora Sky and Aurora Sun specifically, and partnerships, Aurora Nordic, it's been a busy bee in acquisition department. Last year, it acquired CandyMed Therapeutics for around $850 million, MedRelief for about $2 billion, and ICC Labs for close to $200 million. Unfortunately, this is the negative part. About 80% of Aurora's deal to buy MedRelief was labeled. 80% of this deal was labeled as goodwill, with essentially half or more of its other transactions labeled likewise, meaning that CandyMed Therapeutics as well as ICC Labs are essentially either half or more are just the same as 80% of Aurora's deal to buy MedRelief is considered goodwill. At the end of its fiscal second quarter, 63% of the company's total assets, 3.06 billion Canadian dollars, were tied up in goodwill. 63% of its assets. That's 37% that is labeled assets that is somewhere else. That's more than half of the total assets that Aurora has on its books is considered goodwill. There's little guarantee that Aurora Cannabis will be able to recapture this premium and may wind up taking large write-downs in the future. Now, one of the differences between Aurora Cannabis and many of these new cannabis companies in this sector is the fact that they're new. Okay, Kraft-Heinz has old history. They've been around for a very long time, but in the long run, Aurora Cannabis has not been here that long. So the goodwill that he has accumulated so far literally can be dwindled once this cannabis market is able to flourish. It's able to get a little bit more legality under its belt to where it's more acceptable in the marketplace for people to consume its products. Now, the only thing that can really hurt Aurora Cannabis is if this competition becomes fierce. Okay, it comes crowded with so many other people creating cannabis products just like Aurora Cannabis. Then I can see possibly Aurora Cannabis taking some write-downs on this goodwill assets that they have tied up. Okay, so right now, yes, it will take a while. I would say a couple of years or so before we might see any of this really pan out. So just make sure that you keep your eyes on this video, that it was brought to your attention back in 2019 that this is something that can possibly happen. Okay, just considering that a lot of their assets is considered goodwill. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the price chart for Aurora Cannabis and see whether or not there is a possibility of this particular stock moving to the downside. So what we're seeing here right now, you're seeing the monthly price chart for Aurora Cannabis, United States dollars, not the Canadian market. And you can tell here that the long term over the last couple of months, Aurora Cannabis has just been bouncing between $5 and currently $8, but it has been able to try to trade all the way up there as high as $12 in the last couple of months. The last 2 months, you all can see here that we haven't seen this much volume come into this space in quite some time. It literally has been all time thus far since it's been trading on the New York Stock Exchange. And last month, the volume was exceedingly heavy. Okay, and the market was not even able to really move above the $8 price. So it tells us that from a long-term standpoint that there has been a lot of selling going on in the market for Aurora Cannabis. Here we are looking at on the weekly bars. The last couple of weeks, Aurora Cannabis has tried to break above $8 and it is having a hard time doing it now. Last week was a lot of volume, as well as, again, we wasn't able to break above $8. So it tells us that the market in Aurora Cannabis is really not too euphoric for higher prices as of this particular time. The market, though, is still traded within that consolidational range. I do expect this stock to continue to move to the downside. $7 will be the first area that is going to try to hold support. But overall, that the opportunity that we had for us to break above $8 has definitely passed. We are going to try to take another leg down to the downside. So I just want to reiterate that we are seeing $7 as a support area. But considering how we've been trading over the last 4 days, shows us that $7 can also be broken to the downside. So we just wanted to go in and give you all our particular price prediction for Aurora Cannabis concerning this article. It will have to be a long-term price objective in order for us to really determine this article transitioning over to the price chart. So considering that we don't have that much price history for Aurora Cannabis, we really cannot tell you whether or not this will come to fruition. More or less, I just wanted to tell you all about this article, and can it be a warning for a lot of these cannabis stocks that are trying to get their foot off the ground with many acquisitions and buying out companies. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Right now, Aurora Cannabis is still geared for lower prices. Look for $7 to try to be support. But again, we have had numerous opportunities to try to break up above $8. We were not able to do it. So that's why we have a probability to where we can break below it. But until then, just see this market as weak and moving lower. So give us your thoughts, give us your opinion about the article, about what you think it is going to do to the cannabis industries right now, long term, especially if they have majority of the assets in goodwill. Give us your thoughts about the article. We will have a link in the description of this video. And as well, go ahead and go to our HueFin Financial website, HueFinancial.com. There you guys can get more of our stock videos, cryptocurrency videos, as well as some of our blogs that we speak on concerning financial markets. Make sure you all maintain your profitability, and I will talk to you all later.